There's no place to hide down here. No place to hide down here. Went to the rock, got on my knees. I heard the angels weep for me. No place to hide down here.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
The United States of America has got to be leading the world in bringing people together, not simply supplying weapons to kill children in Gaza. This last series of attacks killed 64 children and destroyed a large part of the infrastructure of Gaza in a community that has already been one of the most uninhabitable territories in the world.
The words of Senator Bernie Sanders. I want you to just think about what he just said. He said, I want to bring everybody together. The U.S. should be doing that. But we're supplying weapons to kill children in Gaza. As if we told the Israelis, when you buy this weaponry from us, make sure you kill children in Gaza. Make sure you do. This is where we are now with so many on the left. And some of those on the left are Jewish in faith, like Senator Chuck Schumer, majority leader of the Senate. And he's really just kind of not saying a whole lot about all this anti-Semitism that's suddenly surfacing. We have had, according to let me get the stats here in front of me, according to the Anti-Defamation League, 193 reports, 193 anti-Semitic incidents over this last week. The week before, 131. And why? Well, because Israel was firing and shooting into Gaza, killing Palestinians, trying to hit Hamas, because Hamas has launched more than 4,000 rockets indiscriminately into Israel. And Hamas, a terrorist organization, which you're going to hear Bernie admit here in a moment that they are, they don't really care where their rockets go. I don't know how much real guidance they have on them, but we do know they got them from Iran. The very administration, the Biden administration, I should say the very nation the Biden administration wants to make best friends with again, as Obama did. And Trump came into office and tore up that so-called nuclear treaty because it's worthless anyway. They weren't going to follow it. And we imposed sanctions because we knew Iran was supporting terrorist activities, including Hamas. And Hamas exists solely to destroy Israel, to eradicate all Jews. Senator Schumer, that would include you. And yet you don't really speak out against what's been happening. And over the weekend, we had numerous reports of Jews in various places being attacked. One at a restaurant, an outdoor area where they were finally allowed to die in New York City as they're trying to, bring traffic back to the downtown area. Many wearing and displaying PLO flags, shouting at the diners, spitting on them. Just listen. That's a perfect example, and Quentin did an excellent job trying to edit out a lot of those remarks. And I'm glad he did, because there are several F-bombs in there. We tried the best we could. But these folks are just dining at either a place that was known to cater to Jewish customers or something that the customers were doing, and all these supporting PLO Palestinians started rushing and spitting on them and shouting and everything. And that's just one example. There's a congressman, New York State Assemblyman, I should say, that showed a group of men kicking and attacking an individual on the ground in the middle of the street and then running away. The state assemblyman said a Jewish man savagely beaten by a Palestinian mob in New York City. Brazen violence against innocent people. It is in New York City. All the major networks are based in New York City. All the major publications have headquarters or some main office in New York City. So if you keep that in mind, Joe Concha, a reporter for The Hill and also contributor to Fox News, obviously couldn't help but note those incidents just ignored.
On the evening newscasts of ABC, NBC, CBS News, no coverage of this whatsoever on the homepages of the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN.com. Not much coverage there as well. And let's put it this way. Let's say a pro-Israeli group had actually attacked Muslims at a restaurant in the same manner, asking, where are the Jews, or chanting death to Jews, right, or death to Muslims in this case, if you're going to use that scenario. You would think that that would be covered extensively, as it should, because this is being investigated now as a hate crime.
As it should be. As it should be. And yes, if it were turned the other way, if a bunch of folks that were Jewish were attacking some Palestinian couples sitting and having a dinner at a restaurant, they're obviously attacking them because of their religion. That equates to a hate crime. And yes, they should also be prosecuted. And, of course, you would have seen that wall-to-wall coverage on the mainstream, correct that, the state-controlled media. But in this case, they just didn't see it. I don't know how. I put up a clip of it, by the way. I take it back. I did not do that. I started to. So I started to tell you, I put it up on my Facebook. I did put something else up I'll tell you about a little bit later. But keep in mind, a lot of this response that we're saying right now, it's not an explanation for any of it, nor an excuse, but for the more recent attacks, is because of Hamas firing indiscriminately rockets supplied by Iran into Israel. Now, when Israel retaliates, and it will, of course it will, they have precision attacks. They even call ahead in some cases and say, this building's coming down. It has served as a headquarters for Hamas. If you're in there, you had time to get out. That's how last week members of the Associated Press who worked in one building were notified we're going to destroy the building because Hamas is headquartered in that building. And you know, if there are any reporters worth their salt in the AP, they knew Hamas was in the same building. You have to ask what kind of niceties and coverage they were giving Hamas at the time. But anyway, Israel sent word, so everybody got out. No one was killed in that building coming down. I think somebody might have been injured. And they sent in a rocket with precision and brought it down. But sometimes, I should say every time, Hamas is hiding its rockets and its command post in the midst of civilians. Because they know if Israel tries to hit that target, they're probably going to kill innocent people, such as kids. And so here's Bernie Sanders saying, let me read his quote he said. The U.S. has got to be leading the world in bringing people together, not simply supplying weapons to kill children in Gaza. The last series of attacks killed 64 children. Bernie, how many kids have been killed by those rockets that do get through the Iron Dome in Israel, or how many innocent people, period, regardless of their age. Hamas made up of Palestinians. They're putting their own people at risk, but they don't care because they're more than willing to use that as a propaganda piece and say, look, and someone like Bernie Sanders buys it. And he's not the only member of Congress that does it as well. But Bernie Sanders will admit, yeah, I know Hamas is not a nice group. Listen to this.
Look, Hamas is a terrorist, corrupt, authoritarian group of people, and we have got to stand up to them. But once again, our job is not simply to put more and more military support for Israel. It is to bring people together. And we can't do it alone. We need the international community. But that's what I think we need to be doing.
He is lying out his teeth. We said we've got to be an international community, all come together. There will be no coming together if there's no Israel, if it gets wiped out, because if we're not helping them with weapons so they can protect themselves, that's a large part of the Iron Dome project, that they can shoot these rockets out of the sky before they hit ground, we would have a lot more deaths. And he wants you to believe that if we don't supply any more weapons to Israel, things will be just fine. He has no problem with Iran getting what it needs from Russia or China, and Iran in turn giving it and selling it to Hamas. Got to be on our back, right? And, of course, you got Congresswomen Tlaib and Omar that basically, not just because they're Muslim, because I know numerous Muslims who are not anti-Semitic. It's not their faith, but they're not really anti-Semitic. But you got these two congresswomen, and they've been quoted as such, siding with Louis Farrakhan and basically calling Jews cockroaches. And you don't see Senator Schumer, a Jewish man, politician, speaking out and defending. But again, Bernie Sanders does. He tries to say we should do something against this kind of action. I mean, we have to hate anybody that starts such actions. Listen to this.
We have to combat the increase in hate crimes in this country against Asians, against African Americans, against Latinos. So we got a serious problem of a nation which is being increasingly divided, being led by right-wing extremists in that direction.
There are a number of liberals who use the word apartheid to describe Israel's treatment of the Palestinians. A number of them liberals in the House who use that language. The executive director of the American Jewish Congress, who handled Jewish outreach for your campaign, has said that word, Joel Rubin, has said that using that word has increased the level of vitriol that has contributed to this anti-Semitism. Do you think those who share your view should not use that kind of language?
Well, I think we should tone down the rhetoric.
No, he doesn't. That's him on Face the Nation, CBS News. I think we should tone down the rhetoric. No, he doesn't. Otherwise, why would he sit there on that program and say the U.S. of America has got to be leading the world in bringing people together, not simply supplying weapons to kill children in Gaza? Supplying weapons to kill children in Gaza. That's toning down the rhetoric? No, that's inflaming it. And being false at the same time. There's a resolution being introduced in Congress that's going to condemn one congresswoman because of the Israeli-Hamas conflict. I'll have that and also a good story about a demonstration. Stand by, please.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter @LarryConnorsUSA.